Hello, so this is the second video for the 2024 AQA GCSE Psychology predicted questions, and obviously for the second video this is paper 2. As I said on my first video, I would highly recommend you not to rely on predictions. They're often not very accurate, but hopefully you will get something from this video. If nothing else, it's a chance for you to go over the specification, see what you do know, see what you don't know, go into a bit more detail. The reason I'm recording it is because if I don't, someone else will, and they might not give that warning. And just be careful of people that do make predictions and then go for what's called confirmation bias. They say, oh look, I made this prediction and it came true. They'll ignore the ones that didn't and just focus on the ones that did. But anyway, without further ado, hopefully looking at some of the topics in each of the units will be helpful for you in the run-up to the exam. So firstly, looking at the social influence topic, I also said this on my first video, you might want to double check that I've been accurate in classifying the questions. I'm sure I've made a couple of mistakes, but hopefully there's some accuracy here and you can rely on some of the classifications. They'll be maybe slightly different than what's on the spec, but it gives you a bit of an overview on what's on the topic. So as you can see here, conformity's come up on its own a couple of times, but the Ash's study has been really popular. It's come up in most papers, so that can be one thing or another. It can either mean it's less likely to come up this time because it's been quite regular already, or you can say, well, it comes up in every paper, so of course it's going to come up this year as well. I haven't put it down on my one just because it did come up as a 6 marker last year, but who knows. The one thing I did think that could potentially come up is the dispositional factors looking at conformity, so we'll see in a minute some questions on that. The Milgram's agency study did come up as a 9 marker a few years ago, but hasn't really come up since, so that might be worth something looking at. Pili-Arvin's study has come up as a 9 marker, might come up as a shorter one. There's been a smattering of social dispositional factors looking at pro-social behaviour, and de-individuation's come up every now and again. There hasn't really been a 9 marker on collective behaviour, so I've said maybe combine, so social and dispositional factors. Pro-social behaviour, collective crowd and collective behaviour could come up, so we can look at that in a bit. So looking now then at the sorts of questions that could come up, make sure you're aware of some of the dispositional factors affecting conformity. So they're factors about the individual, so looking at their expertise, looking at their personality, locus of control. Those are factors that could affect conformity. And then I've put a dispositional factors looking at pro-social behaviour potentially come up. I've given you a bit of an AO2 there. And then finally discuss social and or dispositional factors affecting crowd and collective behaviour. So looking at de-individuation, the role of morality, things like that would be a good one to look at for a 9 marker in the social topic. Next, looking at language, thought and communication. Last year's, the 2023 9 marker was Piaget's theory, so theory of language. The safer Wolf hypothesis hasn't come up on its own, so that might be one that's worth looking at in terms of a 9 marker. So we'll look at the AO1 there. Von Frisch's B study did come up a fair few years ago. It's come up a couple of times since. Could potentially come up. Yuki's study did come up, as you see at the bottom there. So yeah, a bit of a smattering of everything here. The one that it might be an outside chance, they might clump non-verbal communication together. So body language, personal space, and eye contact maybe might come up together as a longer question. So I've done a couple of questions, not the longer ones, but just making sure you're prepared for some short or longer questions that come up on there. So I've done the one here, safer Wolf, looking at 4 marker. Make sure you're aware of some of the use of eye contact, and yeah, the other non-verbal communication. And then I've put an AO2 there about body language, posture. So how could you use that information? So making sure you're aware of the AO1 and the AO2. Looking at brain and neuropsychology then, the 9 marker that I've suggested, it would might be Tolving's. I don't think that's come up. I couldn't see it anyway. It came up as a 6 marker, but hasn't come up as a 9 marker, whereas most of the studies in both paper 1 and paper 2 have come up previously as 9 markers. So that might be one worth looking at. The other one that I've said there, synapses and chemical transmission. So that's come up in the psychological problems topic, but I haven't seen it come up in the brain and neuropsychology topic. So that's why I've suggested looking at that one. Cognitive neuroscience and brain damage has come up once, so potential for coming up again. Again, scanning techniques hasn't come up that often, so that's why I'm saying that those ones might come up. And as you can see here, explain how excitation and inhibition are involved in synaptic transmission. Don't forget you could get the diagram. You could get asked to draw a diagram or label a diagram on both the neuron and synapse. Explain the impact of neurological damage on motor ability and or behavior. So that's terminology from the specification, so make sure you'd be able to answer that one. Stroke is the brain damage that they actually mention in the specification. Motor ability and or behavior, so obviously that's movement, and yeah, any behaviors. Hemispheric lateralization is a good one to talk about there, where if you have damage to the left hemisphere in the brain, it's probably going to affect the motor ability in the right hand side of the body. That would be a good way to answer that one. Tolving study, I quite like Tolving study. It's an interesting one. This is the gold memory study. You can bring in some of the memory topic here, looking at semantic encoding and episodic encoding, and the different areas of the brain, and it was a small sample size, using using scientific methods. So I think there's a lot to talk about in Tolving study, so I don't think it'd be too bad of a 9 markers come up. And then we've got psychological problems. Again, smattering of the different things that have come up in different areas. Biological theory of depression, that would be a good one to come up as a 9 marker potentially. So the psychological theory of depression has come up as a 9 marker on its own, biological hasn't, so looking at SSRIs, and then yeah, SSRIs as a treatment, and looking at, when we're talking about the biological theory, obviously that would be low levels of serotonin. You'd have to link that through and explain the synaptic transmission there. The link to the different symptoms, so low dysregulation in sleeping and eating, which are also linked to serotonin. Questions have come up on SSRIs, but you can link those there. Wiley study as well, that's come up. It has come up as a bit of a longer answer. Potentially come up. The other named study in the spec that hasn't come up is Cage's twin study, looking at the biological theory of addiction. So that's the one with the in Sweden and the Temperance Board, and alcoholics and identical and non-identical twins. There was a higher incidence rate in the identical twins, suggesting a biological underpinning. Again, I think that's quite a nice one to talk about. Lots of evaluation there. The aversion therapy came up a couple of years ago. Self-management hasn't really as a 9 marker, so the 2 9 markers there, again one of the named studies, and then looking at the biological theory of depression, low levels of serotonin. So that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour. Of course you can pause all the way through. Best of luck with the exams coming up. Yeah, hope it goes well for you. Like, rate, subscribe, all of that malarkey. Okay, thanks, bye.